So hey guys, as you know previously Backrooms Beyond the Reality was a great success, and you liked the story very much. After 6 to 7 months finally we present you Backrooms 2 as sequel to previous Backrooms franchise story. Previously, as you know, Josh and his friend Selvik managed to return back to their real world from Backrooms. But Sarah's path was manipulated, causing her to be trapped in Backrooms. Josh and Selvik decided to once more visit Backrooms to save Sarah and learn some secrets. However, things were not the same. Find out what happened. We present you Backrooms 2, The Rise of S.O.B.
It was a Friday, the kind that promised nothing but the dog grind of office life. Josh sat hunched over his computer, a captive in his cubicle. The fluorescent lights cast an eerie glow on his face, accentuating the lines of boredom etched into his features. "Damn this Friday," he muttered to himself, his voice barely audible over the hum of the office. "It's as boring as usual." A wistful smile crept onto his lips as he thought about the days gone by, days filled with adrenaline, fear, and an odd camaraderie with Dr. Selvik and Sarah. Their unexpected journey through the backrooms was a stark contrast to this monotonous existence. Shaking his head to dispel the nostalgic reverie, Josh returned his focus to the computer. He began to create new files. the rhythmic clicking of keys providing a solitary soundtrack to his otherwise dreary day. Suddenly, the harsh intrusion of reality shattered his concentration. Ms. Kingston, his boss, a woman with a perpetual scowl and an uncanny ability to find fault, stormed over to his desk. With a thunderous thud, she dropped a pile of papers onto his workspace. "Josh," she barked, her voice echoing through the quiet office. "Get this work done by the end of the week. No excuses. And don't forget, your salary depends on it." Josh forced a smile, his inner turmoil masked by a calm exterior. "Yes, ma'am, sure," he replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. As she turned and walked away, he let out a long, exasperated sigh. Ms. Kingston's stiletto heels clicked away like a metronome of impending doom. As the sound faded, Josh slumped back in his chair, letting out a sigh that could deflate a blimp. "All right, universe," he muttered, rubbing his temples. "Enough with the Friday blues. Back to the grind." He reached for his coffee, only to find it lukewarm and suspiciously beige. "Oh, even the coffee gods have forsaken me today." Just then, a notification popped up on his computer screen. It was a file named Selvica Asaruk's document. Curiosity piqued, Josh clicked it open. A wall of complex mathematical equations and symbols assaulted his eyes. "Whoa, Dr. Selvik," he breathed. "Looks like you've been busy with your advanced Sudoku." A sudden realization dawned on him. Dr. Selvik, his slightly mad but brilliant mentor from the Backrooms. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a dead end after all. "Eureka!" he exclaimed, startling a nearby co-worker who promptly dropped a stack of papers, scattering them like confetti. "The Institute of Dimensional Studies." A mischievous grin spread across his face. "Sorry, work, but duty calls. Besides, Dr. Selvik's cryptic equations are way more interesting than Ms. Kingston's endless paperwork." He grabbed his bag, practically skipping out of his cubicle. Just as he reached the door, Ms. Kingston's voice, laced with venom, cut through the air. "Josh, where the heck do you think you're going?" Ignoring her, Josh threw a hasty fire drill over his shoulder and sprinted out the door. He hailed a cab. The driver, a man with a handlebar mustache and a perpetually suspicious squint, eyeing him with skepticism. "Where to, champ?" The driver rumbled, his voice gravelly enough to wake the dead. "The Institute of Dimensional Studies," Josh blurted out, a hint of breathlessness betraying his earlier enthusiasm. The driver's eyebrow shot up, nearly disappearing into his hairline. "Institute of what now?" he drawled, his tone conveying a healthy dose of disbelief. "It's a research facility," Josh stammered, trying to sound convincing. "They, study dimensions, parallel universes, stuff like that." The driver grunted, a flicker of amusement dancing in his eyes. "Sounds like a bunch of hooey to me, but hey, your dime." He flicked on the meter with a flourish. As the cab sped through the city, Josh tried to explain the Backrooms, Dr. Selvik, and his sudden urge to visit the Institute. The driver, however, seemed more interested in regaling him with tales of his own, a close encounter with a rogue squirrel that almost took out his side mirror, a near miss with a jaywalking nun, and a particularly stubborn pothole that seemed to have a personal vendetta against his tires. Josh was both slightly entertained and utterly bewildered, his head spinning from the combination of the crazy cab ride and his own swirling thoughts. Taking a deep breath, he squared his shoulders and approached the entrance, ready to face whatever awaited him within the Institute of Dimensional Studies. The taxi screeched to a halt, its tires protesting against the asphalt. Josh's eyes widened in awe as the imposing structure of the dimensional institution unfolded before him. It was a behemoth of glass and steel, a testament to human ingenuity and ambition. The building seemed to hum with energy, a hive of activity as scientists and researchers bustled in and out. Josh was about to step out of the cab when his gaze was drawn to a poster plastered on a nearby lamppost. His heart skipped a beat as recognition washed over him. The poster, faded and worn, featured a familiar face, Sarah, his companion in the harrowing ordeal of the backrooms. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the city's clamor. The same Sarah, with her infectious laugh and unwavering spirit, was declared missing. The poster detailed her disappearance, the last known location, and a plea for any information. A cold dread crept into Josh's heart. How could this be? Sarah was supposed to be safe, back to her normal life. Had she somehow found herself back in the labyrinthine horrors of the backrooms? Or was something far more sinister at play? As Josh approached the institution, he couldn't shake the feeling of déjà vu. The place exuded an aura of mystery and intrigue, a place where the boundaries of reality were constantly being pushed. He took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. He had to find out what had happened to Sarah. This was more than just a personal quest. It was a mission. Josh approached the imposing gates of the dimensional institution, a lump of anticipation forming in his throat. A burly security guard, sporting a uniform that looked like it was designed to intimidate, blocked his path. "Hey, kiddo," the guard began, his voice as rough as sandpaper. "What's your business here? Where's your ID card?" Josh blinked, taken aback. ID card. Good question," he stammered, his mind racing. "I'm here to see Dr. Selvig." The guard snorted. "Oh, really? Well, tough luck, kid. Nobody asked for you. And Dr. Selvig is a busy man, locked up in his lab. No visitors allowed without a pass or an ID card." Frustration bubbled up within Josh. "Come on, man," he pleaded. "I'm a friend. We've been through hell together." The guard crossed his arms, unimpressed. "Sorry, pal, rules are rules. Now, either scram or I'll have to call security." Josh felt a surge of anger. He couldn't let this go. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled up tissue, and pretended to throw it at the guard. The guard's face turned beet red. "Hello," he roared, charging towards Josh. A full-blown argument ensued, with Josh dodging the guard's clumsy attempts at grappling, and the guard looking increasingly ridiculous. It was a spectacle that would have made a cat video blush. Just as the situation was about to escalate into a full-blown wrestling match, a voice cut through the chaos. "What's going on here?" Both Josh and the guard froze, turning to face the source of the interruption. There, standing in the doorway of the institution, was Dr. Selvig himself. The guard, still panting from his failed attempts at capturing Josh, saluted stiffly. "Sir, this man doesn't have a pass or an ID card," he reported, pointing an accusing finger at Josh. Josh, meanwhile, was too stunned to speak. Dr. Selvig, however, was grinning. "It's all right," he said to the guard. "I know him." The guard looked puzzled but nodded, clearly relieved to be out of the fray. "All right, Dr. Selvig, but next time, send a message." The guard marched back to his post, muttering something about unruly visitors. As soon as the guard was out of earshot, Josh let out a relieved sigh. "Selvig, man, it's been too long." Dr. Selvig returned the hug, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Indeed, Josh. Indeed. It's like old times." Huh. As they stood there, catching up, Josh couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where they could unravel the mysteries of the backrooms together. Just as Josh was about to dive into the heart of the matter, a familiar voice cut through the air. "Hey, my payment for..." It was the taxi driver, his face a mask of indignant expectation. Josh groaned, his face turning a comical shade of crimson. He had completely forgotten about the fare. Panic set in as he realized he didn't have enough cash on him. Turning to Selvik, he blurted out, "Selvik, can you lend me $120? I forgot to pay the driver and I'm fresh out of cash." Selvik's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. You forgot to pay the taxi driver. Josh, my friend, you have a unique talent for forgetting things. With a resigned sigh, Selvik handed the driver the money. The driver, after a moment of disbelief, pocketed the cash with a satisfied grunt and drove off. As they watched the taxi disappear, Selvik turned to Josh with a mixture of amusement and concern. Well, that was certainly an unexpected turn of events. They started walking towards the building, Josh feeling a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude. I know, I'm a walking disaster, he admitted. It's a good thing I'm here to clean up your messes, Selvik replied with a chuckle. As they walked through the empty hallway, Josh couldn't resist asking, "So, I didn't know you needed a pass or ID card to get in here." Selvik chuckled. "It's pretty standard procedure. Actually, I gave you one during our time in the backrooms. You know, just in case we ever needed to come back." Josh's face turned a deeper shade of red. "Oh, right. That ID card. It's probably still in my bag at home." Selvik raised an eyebrow. "You're kidding, right?" Josh sheepishly nodded. Selvik shook his head, a mixture of amusement and exasperation evident in his expression. "Well, let's hope security doesn't notice. Follow me." They reached a door marked restricted area, and Selvik punched in a code. The door hissed open, revealing a state-of-the-art laboratory. Equipment lined the walls, and a large, holographic display dominated the center of the room. "Welcome to my humble workspace," Selvik said, gesturing to the room. "I've been working on a theory about dimensional rifts and their potential to be stabilized." Josh's eyes widened. "You're actually working on that?" Selvik nodded. "It's a long shot, but I believe it could be the key to preventing another Backrooms incident." As Josh took in the complexity of the lab, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. He was in the presence of a true genius. Josh's mind was racing. Suddenly, the missing poster of Sarah clicked into place. "Selvik," he started, his voice trembling slightly. "I saw a poster of Sarah outside. Remember that girl from the backrooms? What's wrong?" Selvik sighed, a look of concern etched on his face. "I know. I saw it too. One of her friends told me she hasn't returned. Even the museum where she used to work says there's no record of her after the day we left the backrooms." A cold dread washed over Josh. "What's wrong? Why hasn't she come back?" Selvik hesitated, his gaze fixed on a point in the distance. "Well, Josh, to be honest," I think he paused, taking a deep breath. "I think Sarah hasn't returned to our world." Josh's heart pounded in his chest. "What do you mean, she hasn't returned?" "I think something is wrong with her, and possibly with the backrooms itself," Selvik explained. Confusion and fear warred within Josh. "But she went through the slide with us. We came back here." Selvik shook his head. "I think someone or something manipulated Sarah's transportation. I have a strong feeling she's still trapped in the backrooms." Josh felt a surge of anger and determination. "Wait, what are you saying? Are you serious?" Selvik nodded solemnly. "I'm serious, Josh. After a lot of research, I found a clue." Hope, however faint, ignited within Josh. "A clue? Really?" "Yes," Selvik replied, his voice filled with purpose. "Wait, let me show you." He turned to a holographic display, his fingers dancing across the interface. Images and data flickered into existence, forming a complex web of information. Josh leaned forward, his eyes scanning the display intently. Selvik pointed to a specific data point. See this anomaly here? It occurred around the same time we escaped the backrooms. It's a disruption in the dimensional fabric. Selvik's holographic display was now filled with a collage of faces. Men and women, young and old, all sharing a look of haunted resilience. Josh stared at the images, confusion growing within him. "What's with this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Selvik's expression turned somber. "These are images of previous survivors of the backrooms. People who, like us, found their way back." Josh's mind raced. There was something unsettling about the collective look in their eyes. A mixture of fear, determination, and a haunting sadness. "I've been studying the backrooms for a long time now," Selvik continued, his voice low, "and I've come to a disturbing conclusion. The backrooms isn't just a place. It's more like a rift." Josh tilted his head, trying to comprehend. "What do you mean, a rift?" Selvik explained, "Think of it as a tear in the fabric of reality. A place where the rules of our world don't apply, and it seems to be growing, evolving." Josh's mind was reeling. But we survived. We came back." Selvik nodded. "Yes, we did. But why couldn't Sarah?" "That's the question." A chilling realization dawned on Josh. "You mean there's something wrong with the backrooms?" Selvik's expression confirmed his fears. "I think so. Something is preventing people from returning. It's like the backrooms is holding onto them." A heavy silence fell between them. The implications of Selvik's theory were staggering. "So, we have to go back?" Josh asked, his voice small. Selvik nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "It's our only option. We need to understand what's happening to the backrooms. What's wrong with it? And most importantly, what happened to Sarah?" Josh hesitated, a wave of fear washing over him. The thought of returning to that endless, labyrinthine horror was terrifying. "No way," he said, his voice firm. "I'm not going back." Selvik understood his fear. "I know it's asking a lot, Josh. But think about Sarah. She needs us." Josh's resolve wavered. The image of Sarah, lost and alone in that terrifying place, was a powerful motivator. "But are you sure she's even there?" Josh asked, a glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes. Selvik met his gaze. "I'm as sure as I can be. Something is drawing me to that conclusion. We have to find out for sure." A long moment of silence passed. Then, Josh nodded, his voice filled with determination. "Fine. We have to rescue our friend." Selvik smiled, a look of relief and admiration in his eyes. "That's the spirit, my boy. Together, we'll uncover the secrets of the backrooms and bring Sarah home." Ash, his heart pounding like a jackhammer, looked at Selvik with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. "So, how exactly are we going to get back there?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Selvik grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Fear not, my friend. I've got a little surprise for you." He reached into a hidden compartment in his desk and pulled out a peculiar device about the size of a small toaster. "This, my dear friend, is a teleporter. Or, more accurately, a backrooms rift connector." Josh's eyes widened. "A teleporter? You're serious?" Selvik nodded, a proud grin spreading across his face. "Absolutely. I managed to snag it from a particularly enterprising entity in the backrooms. It's supposed to create a stable portal directly to the rift." "Will it be painful?" Josh asked, a hint of apprehension in his voice. Selvik laughed. "Nah, it's like taking a really long elevator ride, just with less buttons." With a flourish, Selvik extended his hand. "Ready?" Josh hesitated for a moment, then took Selvic's hand. As their fingers intertwined, a surge of electricity shot through his body. It was more of a tingling sensation than pain, and it was gone almost as quickly as it had come. Selvig pressed a button on the device, and a soft hum filled the room. The device glowed with an ethereal blue light. "Here we go," Selvig said, his voice filled with anticipation. They waited, but nothing happened. The device continued to hum, but there was no sign of a portal. "Damn it," Selvig muttered. "What's going on?" Josh, his patience wearing thin, said, "I think something's wrong with your fancy toy." Just as the words left his lips, a holographic interface appeared in front of them. It displayed a map of sorts, covered in swirling, multicolored lines. Selvig's eyes widened. "Oh no, not this." Before they could react, the holographic map began to glitch and distort. The lines twisted and turned, and then, with a blinding flash of light, a portal opened in the middle of the room. It was a swirling vortex of colors, and it seemed to be growing larger by the second. "Oh God!" Selvig exclaimed, his voice filled with alarm. "The portal's destabilizing." Before they could do anything, a powerful force pulled them towards the portal. They tried to resist, but it was futile. In a matter of seconds, they were sucked into the vortex, disappearing into the unknown. A moment of silence filled the laboratory. The only sound was the faint hum of the teleporter, now alone in the empty room. Josh's eyes fluttered open, the world a blur of yellow and shadows. A low hum filled his ears, a familiar yet unsettling sound. Slowly, his vision focused. He was lying on a cold, hard floor, surrounded by endless walls of yellow. The fluorescent lights cast an eerie glow, casting long, distorted shadows. "Selvig," he croaked, his voice hoarse from disuse. Selvig stirred beside him, his eyes opening slowly. "Where are we?" he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. Josh looked around, taking in the familiar yet alien surroundings. "It's the Backrooms, right?" he said, his voice filled with uncertainty. Selvig sat up, his eyes wide with shock. He looked around, his gaze scanning the endless expanse of yellow. This can't be right," he muttered, his voice trembling slightly. The Backrooms they remembered was a place of disorientation and fear. But this was different. There was an order to it, a sense of purpose. The walls were cleaner, the yellow less intense, and there was something else. Something that chilled them to the bone. As their eyes adjusted to the dim light, they noticed something peculiar. Figures were moving through the endless corridors. They were dressed in uniform, their faces obscured by helmets. In their hands, they carried weapons. "What the hell is going on here?" Josh whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. Selvig's face was pale. I don't know," he stammered. "This isn't right. The Backrooms isn't supposed to be like this." Josh looked around, his eyes scanning the scene. "Is this some kind of fancy show?" he asked, trying to find a rational explanation. Selvig shook his head, his expression grim. "Wait, who are those people?" he muttered, his voice barely audible. The soldiers moved with a purpose, their footsteps echoing through the endless corridors. They seemed to be on a mission, their eyes scanning the surroundings with a sense of urgency. Josh and Selvig exchanged a terrified glance. This was no longer the Backrooms they knew. This was something else entirely. Something far more sinister. Selvig's voice was a mix of disbelief and fear. "The Backrooms have changed, really changed," he said, his eyes wide with shock. Josh was confused. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Before he could get an answer, their conversation was interrupted by the harsh click of guns being cocked. Two masked soldiers, their faces hidden behind black helmets, had emerged from a shadowy corner, their weapons pointed directly at their heads. "Ho! What's going on?" Josh exclaimed, his voice rising in panic. Selvik, his voice barely a whisper, replied, "We're not terrorists or invaders." One of the masked men, his voice muffled by the helmet, barked, "Keep your voices down." The tension in the room was palpable. The soldiers surrounded Josh and Selvik, their guns still trained on them. "Selvik, what do we do now?" Josh whispered, his voice filled with fear. Selvik's mind raced. "Let's just do what they say," he replied, his voice barely audible. One of the masked men pulled out a communication device and started speaking into it, his voice distorted by the helmet. "We've got uninvited guests in Sector 7, requesting immediate backup." Josh and Selvik exchanged terrified glances. The masked men moved quickly, cuffing their hands behind their backs. "Ho, let us go," Josh shouted, struggling against the restraints. One of the soldiers shoved him hard, sending him stumbling backward. "Shut up," the soldier growled. Selvik tried to intervene. "This is wrong. The Backrooms wasn't like this before," he protested. The soldier roughly pushed Selvik as well, propelling him forward. The soldiers marched them down a long, dimly lit corridor. The walls were covered in strange symbols and markings. It felt like they were being led into a nightmare. Finally, they reached a heavy metal door. The soldiers pushed them inside and slammed the door shut, the sound echoing through the empty room. A cold metal bunk and a small, barred window were the only furnishings. Josh slid down the wall, his knees buckling. "Are you sure this is the Backrooms?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's like hell." Selvik sat down on the bunk, his face pale. "Something is definitely wrong," he muttered. "Who are these people? And why have they taken over the Backrooms?" The realization of their predicament hit Josh hard. They were prisoners in a place that was supposed to be a labyrinth of fear. And now, it was a prison. The fate of Sarah, the mystery of the Backrooms, and their own survival hung in the balance. And so, the story of Josh and Selvik took a dark turn as they found themselves trapped in a nightmare they never imagined.